Breathe in and let the air around you grow still. Breathe out and feel the weight of the day begin to lift. The first thing you notice isn't something you see, but something you feel. It's a profound and ancient cold, the kind that seeps from solid rock. The air is heavy and damp, carrying the scent of mineral dust, cool earth, and something else, a faint, sweet smell of beeswax and old incense. You've arrived somewhere deep inside a mountain. There are no windows here, only the soft, flickering orange glow of oil lamps set into carved niches in the stone walls. The silence is thick, broken only by the distant, rhythmic drip of water and the soft scuff of your own feet on the uneven floor. You're standing in a tunnel, hand-carved from the mountainside. It's not a crude cave, but a smooth, deliberately shaped corridor. Run your hand along the wall. It's cool and surprisingly sleek under your fingertips, the result of countless hours of labor. This is the fortress monastery of Vardzia, a sprawling city of caves dug into the cliffs of the Arashidi mountain. It feels less like a building and more like a living organism, a human honeycomb with thousands of cells, all interconnected by a web of tunnels, stairways, and hidden passages. You begin to walk, your steps echoing softly. You pass dark openings leading to what must have been storerooms, wine cellars, and bakeries, all carved directly from the rock. This place was designed to be a self-sufficient refuge, a sanctuary that could protect thousands from invasion. It even had its own pharmacy, with stone shelves for medicinal herbs, and a clever system of ceramic pipes that brought fresh water trickling through the complex. It's an astonishing feat of engineering, a vertical city hidden in plain sight. As you wander deeper, you hear the low murmur of voices from an opening just ahead. The light spilling from it is brighter, warmer. You approach quietly, drawn by the sound. Peeking around the corner, you find yourself looking into a grand chamber. The ceiling is a high, carved vault, and the walls are covered in the faint outlines of what will one day be magnificent frescoes. This is a royal chamber, and it is not empty. Two figures are seated at a simple wooden table, their faces illuminated by a candelabra. One is a man in his prime, broad-shouldered and weathered, with a powerful presence that seems to fill the entire room. He wears a heavy tunic and a trimmed beard, and his eyes are sharp and intelligent. This is King George III of Georgia, a formidable warrior king who has spent his reign fighting off rival nobles and external threats. He has the weary, calloused look of a man who has held his kingdom together through sheer force of will. And beside him, listening intently, is his daughter. She is young, perhaps in her late teens, with a quiet intensity that matches her father's. This is Tamar. She isn't yet the revered monarch of legend. She is a co-ruler, crowned alongside her father in a strategic move to secure her place as his successor. It's a necessary political maneuver, as the very idea of a woman ruling this fierce and patriarchal kingdom alone is unthinkable to many of the powerful men who command its armies. You watch them together. Her father speaks in low, rumbling tones, gesturing at a map spread across the table. He isn't just talking to her, he's teaching her. You can see the weight of his experience in the lines on his face, and you can see the burden of future responsibilities settling on her young shoulders. She doesn't look intimidated, but focused, absorbing every word. Her expression is serious, her gaze unwavering. She is learning the delicate, brutal calculus of power, how to placate a restless nobleman, how to fortify a vulnerable border, how to project strength even when you feel uncertain. Historians still wonder about the true nature of their relationship during this co-regency. Was he a genuinely progressive father, grooming a brilliant daughter to take his place? Or was he a pragmatist, using her as a symbol to outmaneuver his rivals and ensure his bloodline continued, with little faith that she could truly rule on her own? Observing them here, in the quiet intimacy of this stone room, it feels like a bit of both. There is a clear affection between them, but also an undeniable tension. He is the sun, and for now, she is the moon, reflecting his light. The power in this room is palpable, a heavy cloak woven from history, ambition, and the unyielding strength of the mountain itself. You can feel the kingdom's future hanging in the balance, resting on the quiet resilience of the young woman at the table. Her journey is just beginning. The crown she shares now is only a prelude to the one she will have to bear alone, and the challenges ahead are far greater than any lesson her father can teach her here, in the cold, safe heart of the mountain. The flicker of the candelabra in the stone room seems to waver for a moment. You watch the flame dance, a tiny, bright soul in the immense, cold dark of the mountain. And then, as if a gentle breath has passed through the chamber, the flame sputters and dies, plunging the room into darkness. The lesson is over. Time shifts, flowing like water through the stone passages around you, and when the light returns, it is different. It is no longer the warm, intimate glow of a single candle, but a vast, cool light filtering through high windows, catching on dust motes that drift like tiny stars in the cavernous space. You are no longer in the secretive heart of Vardzia. You are standing on a cold, polished stone floor, surrounded by towering pillars that stretch up into a shadowy, domed ceiling. The air is thick with the heavy, sweet scent of incense and melting beeswax. A low, resonant sound fills the space, a chorus of male voices chanting in the ancient Georgian tongue. You are in the Svetitskavli Cathedral, the sacred heart of the kingdom, and you are witnessing a coronation. But something about it feels tough. It's less a celebration and more a confirmation, a begrudging acknowledgement. Her father, King George III, is gone, and with his passing, the fragile shield of his authority has vanished. Tamar now stands alone, the sole heir to the throne. But the powerful nobles of the realm, the very men her father spent his life keeping in check, are not about to let a young woman rule without a fight. They have demanded this second coronation. The first one, with her father at her side, doesn't count, they argue. She must be crowned again, this time with their explicit consent, a ceremony designed to remind her that she rules at their pleasure, not by divine right alone. It's a masterful piece of political theater, a power play disguised as pious tradition. You watch from the side, standing among a crowd of these aristocrats. They are draped in rich silks and heavy furs, their faces a collection of pious masks that barely conceal their ambition. You can feel the collective pressure of their gaze on Tamar, who stands at the center of the cathedral. She looks small and isolated in the vastness of the space, a solitary figure before the patriarch. The ceremonial robes they've put on her look incredibly heavy, stiff with gold thread and studded with gems. It must be like wearing a carpet. You notice the quiet defiance in her posture. Her back is straight, her head held high. She does not look cowed. She looks like she is enduring this, playing a role she knows is necessary for now. The chanting swells, echoing off the ancient walls, and the patriarch lifts the crown. It's a magnificent, heavy thing of gold and pearls, glinting in the filtered light. As he places it on her head, you can almost feel the physical weight of it, a sudden, immense pressure. The weight of a kingdom, of its history, of its uncertain future. And more than that, the weight of expectations, doubts, and the silent, simmering challenge from every powerful man in this room. This is when a fascinating and crucial detail is established. As the ceremony concludes, she is not proclaimed Didopoli, the Georgian word for queen. She is proclaimed Meep, king. This isn't a translation error or a quirky local custom. It is a deliberate and radical political statement. To call her queen would be to define her by her gender, to make her a queen consort, in waiting, a vessel for a future husband's power. But king is a title of absolute, indivisible authority. It declares that she is not a placeholder. She is the monarch. It's a brilliant move, a way of using the language of their own patriarchal system against them. You can almost see a flicker of surprise, maybe even grudging respect, on the faces of some of the nobles. They wanted to put her in her place, and instead, she has subtly redefined the very nature of her position. Still, the tension is a living thing in the air. As the court formally acknowledges her, you can study the faces of the most powerful men. There is the head of the treasury, Catholicos Patriarch Michael IV, whose support is conditional at best. He is already planning to use his influence to control her decisions. There is the powerful warlord, whose allegiance is essential for the kingdom's defense, smiling a thin, calculating smile. It's the kind of smile that says, "I will support you as long as you support my interests and my very qualified nephew for that vacant military post." Historians still debate the true mixture of motives that drove these men. Was it pure, cynical self-interest, a straightforward attempt to weaken the monarchy and establish an oligarchy of powerful nobles? Or was there also a genuine, if deeply paternalistic, fear for the kingdom's stability? Perhaps they truly believed a woman was incapable of leading armies and negotiating with the surrounding Seljuk sultanates. Maybe they saw their power grab as a necessary evil to protect the realm from what they perceived as her inevitable weakness. Watching them now, you suspect it's a murky, messy combination of both. They are patriots who love Georgia, but they love their own power just a little bit more. The ceremony ends. The chants fade, leaving a ringing silence. Tamar, now King Tamar, turns to face her court. For a moment, she meets your gaze across the cavernous hall. Her expression is unreadable, a calm mask of sovereignty. But in her eyes, you see the steely glint of resolve. The nobles may have forced this day upon her, but she has survived it. She has accepted their challenge and on her own terms. The weight of the crown is immense, but you get the distinct feeling that she is far stronger than any of them realize. The real battle for the kingdom has just begun. The cold, solemn air of the cathedral dissolves, replaced by a sense of stifling confinement. The grand, echoing space of Svetitskuveli is gone, and you find yourself in a much smaller, more intimate setting. A royal chamber, richly decorated but feeling more like a gilded cage than a place of comfort. Intricate tapestries depicting biblical scenes and heroic hunts cover the stone walls, but they do little to warm the room. The air is heavy with the scent of spiced wine and the faint, nervous perfume of courtiers. There's a low hum of conversation, but it's strained, polite, and utterly devoid of warmth. You are at a royal wedding feast, but it feels more like a political signing bonus. Tamar sits at the head of a long table, the heavy crown of Georgia exchanged for a more delicate diadem, but her posture is just as rigid. She is dressed in opulent silks, a bride on display, but her face is a pale, stoic mask. The nobles, the same men who challenged her at the coronation, are here in force. They are smiling now, their satisfaction almost palpable. They have gotten what they wanted. They have found her a husband. Their argument was simple and, to them, irrefutable. A female monarch needed a male consort to lead the armies and provide an heir. They insisted it was for the good of the kingdom, a way to secure the dynasty. But their choice of groom reveals their true motive. He is not a Georgian nobleman, someone who might form his own power base and challenge them. Instead, they have imported a husband for her. His name is Yuri Bogolyubsky, a Rus prince from the north, currently living in exile. To the nobles, he's the perfect candidate. He has a royal pedigree, military experience, and most importantly, no local allies. He is meant to be a figurehead, a handsome puppet whose strings they can pull, thereby controlling the throne through him. It's a classic case of corporate headhunting, where the new hire is deliberately chosen because he has no existing departmental loyalties. You watch Yuri. He sits beside Tamar, looking pleased with himself. He's boisterous and loud, laughing too readily with the warlords, his voice echoing slightly in the tense silence that falls whenever he speaks. He drinks his wine with a theatrical flourish, a man clearly enjoying his sudden reversal of fortune, from exiled prince to king consort of a wealthy and powerful kingdom. He seems entirely oblivious to the subtle currents of resentment and calculation in the room, or perhaps he simply doesn't care. Tamar, by contrast, is a statue of silent endurance. She barely touches her food. When Yuri leans over to speak to her, she inclines her head with perfect royal grace, but her eyes remain distant and cold. You can feel the profound sense of violation, the humiliation of being forced into this union. This isn't a marriage, it's a transaction. Her hand, her future, her very body have become political capital, traded by her own council to secure their influence. Here, in the forced intimacy of this wedding feast, you witness a lesser-known but deeply personal detail about Tamar's character, her profound piety. It's not just a public performance for a devout kingdom. Her faith is the bedrock of her identity. Chroniclers of the time, often prone to flattery, are unanimous on this point. They write that she prayed for days, begging to be spared this marriage, not just because it was a political maneuver, but because she found the man himself to be coarse and cruel. Her resistance wasn't just a queen defying her counsel, it was a devout woman being forced into a union she felt was unholy. You can see it in the tight set of her jaw, in the way her hand rests near the small, jeweled cross at her neck. She is being forced to compromise not only her power, but her very soul. The meal drags on. The nobles toast the happy couple, their voices ringing with false sincerity. Yuri, growing more flushed with wine, tells a rambling story about a boar hunt, slapping his thigh for emphasis. Each burst of his laughter makes Tamar flinch, almost imperceptibly. It is a portrait of profound incompatibility, a clash of temperament and values so complete it feels like a physical force in the room. He is chaos, she is order. He is impulse, she is deliberation. Historians still puzzle over the specifics of this political coercion. How, exactly, did the nobles force the hand of a monarch who had so cleverly asserted her authority as king? Did they threaten a full-blown civil war? Did they hold the state treasury hostage, refusing to fund the army unless she complied? The chronicles are frustratingly vague on the tactical details, preferring to speak in grand terms of the insistence of the court and the needs of the realm. But looking at the grim, determined faces of the warlords and the treasurer, you can guess it was a multi-pronged attack of threats, manipulation, and relentless pressure. They likely cornered her, leaving her with no viable alternative but to submit, for now. As the feast winds down, you watch as Tamar rises. The room falls silent. She gives a stiff, formal nod to her new husband and then to the assembled court before turning to leave, her ladies-in-waiting fluttering in her wake. Her exit is graceful, dignified, and utterly chilling. She has played her part. She has endured the ceremony and the feast. She has become a reluctant, unhappy bride. But as she disappears through the arched doorway, you see not the defeated look of a victim, but the cold, patient expression of someone who is already planning her next move. This union was their victory, but the war for control of the kingdom and of her own life is far from over. The stifling air of the wedding feast gives way to a simmering, kingdom-wide tension. It's a feeling you can't see, but you can sense it everywhere, like the low hum of electricity before a storm. The initial relief among the nobles that they had successfully managed their queen has soured. The puppet they chose refuses to dance on his strings. In fact, he's trying to cut them and seize the whole stage for himself. The 2 years following the marriage have been a disaster. You are no longer in a single room, but moving through a series of frustrating and increasingly grim vignettes. You see Prince Uri, now king consort, in the royal court, openly mocking Tamar's advisors. You see him drunk, stumbling through the palace corridors, his laughter harsh and cruel. You hear the whispers of the court gossips, stories of his debauchery, his violent temper, and his utter incompetence in matters of state. The man the nobles chose to be a respectable figurehead has turned out to be a public relations nightmare and a genuine political liability. He's like a terrible intern who, upon being given a company credit card, immediately starts expensing champagne and racehorses. The atmosphere in the palace has become toxic. You see Tamar, carrying herself with an almost preternatural calm, a stark contrast to her husband's chaotic energy. She continues with the duties of a monarch, reviewing petitions, meeting with clergy, and studying maps of the kingdom's borders. She is the picture of sober, responsible leadership. But in quiet moments, away from the prying eyes of the court, you can see the strain etched on her face. The personal humiliation is one thing, but the damage he is doing to the stability of the kingdom is another. The nobles are in a bind. Their brilliant plan has backfired spectacularly. They wanted a controllable consort, and instead they got a drunken lout who is alienating everyone and making the entire monarchy look weak and ridiculous. You can imagine the panicked, private meetings they must be having, the pointed fingers and the desperate search for a solution that doesn't make them look like complete fools. Then the scene shifts. You are in a solemn, high-ceilinged chamber filled with the most powerful men in Georgia, the state council and the highest clergy of the Georgian Orthodox Church. Tamar has convened them. She stands before them not as a grieving wife or a wronged woman, but as a monarch addressing a crisis of state. Her voice is calm, measured, but carries an unmistakable core of steel. She lays out the case against her husband, not dwelling on her personal suffering, but focusing on his public transgressions, his drunkenness, his immorality, and his neglect of his duties to the kingdom. This is the moment she draws her line in the sand. Divorce in the 12th century, especially for a royal woman, was virtually unheard of. It was a shocking, radical act. Marriage was a sacrament, a political alliance meant to be permanent. To break it was to defy both God and tradition. But Tamar has had enough. She is using their own logic against them. They forced her into this marriage for the good of the realm, and now she is ending it for the very same reason. You can feel the shock in the room. Some of the clergy look horrified, muttering about the sanctity of marriage. But the nobles, the ones who orchestrated this mess, are silent. They have no choice but to agree. They are trapped by their own failed strategy. To defend Uri now would be to admit their own catastrophic misjudgment. Tamar has them cornered, and she knows it. It is here that you witness a specific and powerful historical fact: Tamar's handling of the divorce settlement. After the council grants her the divorce, she doesn't just throw Uri out. She is incredibly generous. She grants him a significant fortune in gold and jewels and arranges for his safe passage out of the kingdom. It is an act of calculated magnanimity. She isn't just getting rid of a bad husband, she is demonstrating her power and her grace. She is showing the world that she is so secure in her authority that she can afford to be generous to her enemies. It's a political masterstroke, casting her as the calm, benevolent ruler and him as the disgraced outcast. He is exiled. But the story doesn't end there. A lesser-known detail is that Uri doesn't go quietly. Humiliated and furious, he uses the fortune Tamar gave him to raise a rebel army. He returns to Georgia, backed by a faction of disgruntled nobles who see his return as a second chance to seize power. For a brief, terrifying period, the kingdom is plunged into civil war. Tamar, the woman they thought couldn't lead, now has to command her armies against the very man who was supposed to be her military commander. Historians still ask a crucial question here. Did Tamar know Uri would rebel? Was her generous settlement a trap? Did she anticipate that he would overplay his hand and that his rebellion would give her the perfect excuse to crush not just him, but also the faction of nobles who still opposed her? It's impossible to know for sure. It could have been genuine piety and a desire to be merciful. Or it could have been a brilliant, ruthless game of 4D chess. Watching her coolly direct the loyalist forces, you suspect it might be a little of both. The final scene of this chapter is the battlefield after Uri's rebellion has been decisively crushed. Tamar's loyal general stands victorious. The rebel nobles are captured, their power broken once and for all. Uri himself is captured and, in another act of extraordinary clemency, is exiled once again. This time, he is sent away with nothing. He vanishes from the historical record, a failed experiment, a footnote in Tamar's story. Tamar has not only survived the disastrous marriage, but she has emerged from it stronger than ever. She has faced down her council, defied tradition, won a civil war, and purged her court of her most dangerous rivals. She has proven beyond any doubt that she needs no man to rule for her. The kingdom is now truly hers. The weight of the crown feels a little lighter now, not because the responsibilities are less, but because she has finally, completely made it her own. The dust of the rebellion settles, leaving behind a clean, sharp quiet across the kingdom. The air, which was once thick with tension and uncertainty, now feels clear and full of possibility. The failed experiment with Uri Bogolyubsky has served as a painful but effective cauterization, burning away the lingering infection of dissent within the court. Tamar's authority is no longer a matter for debate. It is a fact, proven in council and on the battlefield. You find yourself back in the royal palace, but the atmosphere is transformed. The strained formality is gone, replaced by a sense of relaxed confidence. The guards at the doors stand a little straighter. The courtiers move with a newfound purpose. There is a hum of efficient, productive energy. The kingdom has a single, undisputed center of gravity, and her name is Tamar. Now, the question of marriage and succession must be revisited. But this time, there will be no council of ambitious nobles helping her choose. The decision will be hers and hers alone. She has earned that right. The need for an heir is still a pressing matter of state, but the choice of a partner is now a personal one, guided by political wisdom rather than political pressure. You are present in the throne room as her advisors. The ones who remained loyal gently broach the subject. They are cautious, respectful, keenly aware of how disastrously the last attempt went. They don't present a candidate, they simply state the need. Tamar listens, her expression thoughtful. She is no longer the young, beleaguered ruler being dictated to. She is a seasoned political operator, in her early 30s, secure in her power and clear in her vision for the kingdom. She makes her choice, and it is a testament to her political savvy. He is a man named David Soslan, an Alan prince. The Alans were a people from the North Caucasus, and David had been raised in the Georgian court, essentially growing up within the culture he was now being asked to help lead. This choice is brilliant for several reasons. He is of royal blood, satisfying the need for prestige. He is a renowned military commander, providing the kingdom with the skilled general it requires. And most crucially, he is not a powerful Georgian nobleman with his own competing faction, nor a complete foreigner like Uri. He is the perfect compromise, familiar with Georgia, but not entangled in its internal politics. He's the equivalent of promoting a highly competent manager from a branch office to the corporate headquarters. He knows the company culture, but he doesn't have a clique of allies waiting to cause trouble. Their first meeting, as you observe it, is a study in quiet dignity. David Soslan is presented to the court. He is a handsome man, strong and self-assured, but there is no swagger or arrogance about him. He carries himself with a quiet confidence that complements, rather than competes with, Tamar's own authority. He approaches the throne and bows deeply, his respect for her position clear and genuine. When he rises, his eyes meet hers, and there is an immediate sense of mutual understanding. This will not be a repeat of the last marriage. This will be a partnership. Here you witness a well-documented fact of their union. Upon their marriage, David was granted the title of king consort, but it was explicitly stated that his authority was derived from Tamar's. He was to be her partner, her general, and the father of her children, but she remained the ultimate source of power, the Meep, the King of Kings. Their coins reflected this. Early issues showed Tamar on the front and David on the back, a clear hierarchy. Later, they are shown together, a symbol of their united rule, but the titles always underscore her supreme status. You see them in the months and years that follow, not just in the formal settings of the court, but in the quieter moments. You see them poring over military reports together, his expertise in battlefield tactics complementing her strategic overview of the kingdom's needs. You see them walking in the palace gardens, their conversation easy and familiar. A lesser-known detail that emerges from the chronicles is the genuine affection and respect that grew between them. While the marriage was certainly a political calculation on Tamar's part, it also seems to have been a personally successful one. The chroniclers, who were unsparing in their criticism of Uri, praised David as wise, brave, and most importantly, devoted to his wife and queen. They are a team, and soon, their partnership bears fruit. The kingdom rejoices at the news that Tamar has given birth to a son, George, securing the succession. A few years later, a daughter, Ruzudin, follows. The dynasty is safe. The birth of a male heir solidifies Tamar's reign completely. It silences the last lingering whispers that a female ruler is a temporary, unstable solution. She has fulfilled every duty her station demands. She has pacified her nobles, defended her borders, and now provided a future for the kingdom. Historians still hold a debate about David Soslan's true level of political influence. Was he merely a military commander who deferred to his wife in all matters of state, as the official chronicles suggest? Or was he a more active political partner, whose own counsel and opinions shaped Tamar's policies in ways that were deliberately downplayed by chroniclers eager to build the legend of an all-powerful female king? The truth is likely somewhere in the middle. He was no doubt a powerful and influential figure, but he was also wise enough to understand that his power was best exercised in support of his wife's, not in competition with it. He understood the assignment. You watch them one evening on a balcony overlooking the capital, Tbilisi. The city lights twinkle below them, a peaceful constellation. Their children are asleep inside. A comfortable silence hangs between them. David places a reassuring hand on her arm. This is not the fiery passion of a romantic epic, but something deeper and more enduring. A partnership forged in shared responsibility and mutual respect. With David at her side, Tamar is no longer just surviving, she is poised to build a legacy. The foundation is now set. The ground is firm, the borders are secure, and the court is united. The quiet hum of a safe and prosperous kingdom is beginning, and it is in that quiet that the seeds of a golden age are ready to sprout. The quiet you felt on the balcony overlooking Tbilisi begins to spread, seeping out from the capital and into the very soil of the kingdom. It's a profound, reassuring stillness that settles over the valleys and mountains of Georgia. This isn't the silence of fear or emptiness. It's the quiet hum of a well-oiled machine, the confident peace that comes from knowing you are safe. The storms of political instability have passed, the succession is secure, and the kingdom is finally able to exhale. Your perspective shifts, lifting high above the palace. You are now a silent observer drifting on the breeze, and from this vantage point, You can see the whole of the kingdom laid out below you like a topographical map. To the south and east, you see the vast, sprawling territories of the Seljuk Sultanates, powerful and often aggressive neighbors. But the border is no longer a source of constant anxiety. Instead, you see a chain of well-garrisoned fortresses, their banners snapping crisply in the wind. These are the watchdogs of the kingdom, manned by disciplined and loyal troops under the command of David Soslan and other brilliant generals. You drift lower, close enough to see the daily life in one of these border forts. You see soldiers training in the dusty courtyards, their movements precise and practiced. You smell the sharp scent of wood smoke from the kitchens and the earthy aroma of horses. There is a sense of purpose and high morale here. These aren't nervous conscripts waiting for the next attack. They are confident professionals, secure in their strength and their leadership. The military victories of the past few years, most notably the decisive Battle of Shankar, have created a powerful buffer zone around the kingdom. This military prowess is a historical fact, a cornerstone of Tamar's reign. Her armies didn't just defend Georgia, they pushed its influence outward, creating a network of vassal states that paid tribute and acknowledged Georgia's regional dominance. This security has a ripple effect that touches every aspect of life. You float away from the martial austerity of the border and drift over the rolling hills of the countryside. You see farmers working in their fields, their movements unhurried. They are planting vineyards on terraced slopes, their voices carrying on the still air. They are not constantly looking over their shoulders, worried about raids. The roads that crisscross the landscape are busy with merchants' caravans, laden with silks from the east and wine from the west. The merchants travel without heavy guards, a testament to the safety of the king's highways. It's the 12th century equivalent of feeling safe enough to leave your Amazon package on the porch all day. The peace is productive. It creates the surplus of time, of resources, of mental energy that allows a culture to look beyond mere survival. You see it in the construction projects dotting the landscape. It's not just fortresses being built now. You see the stone foundations of new churches being laid, their designs more ambitious and ornate than before. You see monasteries expanding, adding new libraries and scriptoriums. In the villages, you see new bridges being built over rushing rivers, connecting communities and facilitating trade. There is an optimism in the air, a collective sense that they are building something that will last. This brings you to a lesser-known but crucial detail about Tamar's economic policy, her reform of the tax system. Early in her reign, she recognized that the tax burden on the peasantry was crippling. The endless wars of her predecessors had been funded on the backs of the farmers, leading to widespread poverty and resentment. Tamar, in a move that was both compassionate and incredibly shrewd, lowered taxes for the common people and shifted the burden more heavily onto the nobles and the newly conquered territories. This did two things. It fostered immense loyalty among the general populace, and it provided a stable, predictable stream of income for the state without stifling the agricultural economy that was its foundation. The quiet hum of the kingdom is, in part, the hum of a populace that feels it is being governed fairly. But with this newfound peace and prosperity comes a subtle challenge, a question that historians still ponder. How do you maintain the warrior spirit of a nation when there are no immediate, existential threats? Georgia's identity had been forged in centuries of struggle for survival against larger empires. Now, with the borders secure and the economy humming, what becomes the new focus of the national character? A nation defined by its fight for freedom must find a new purpose in an era of peace. Will its strength turn inward and curdle into decadence, or will it be channeled into something new? You see the answer beginning to take shape in the royal court. The same nobles who once plotted and fought for power are now competing in a different arena. They are becoming patrons of the arts. They commission lavishly illuminated manuscripts, not just of religious texts, but of secular histories and philosophies. They fund the construction of private chapels, each one trying to outdo the other in the beauty of its frescoes. Their competitive energy, once a destructive force, is being sublimated into cultural one-upmanship. It's a far more productive use of their wealth and ambition. You find yourself back in the palace, in a sunlit courtyard where a fountain plashes gently. Tamar is there, not in formal robes, but in a simple, elegant gown. She is listening as a musician plucks a delicate melody on a stringed instrument called a panduri. Her children, now growing, play nearby. The scene is one of perfect tranquility. This is the peace she has built, not through weakness, but through strength. She has created a sanctuary in a violent world. It is this very sanctuary, this quiet space free from the constant clang of swords and the shouts of alarm, that will become the canvas for Georgia's golden age. The stage is set, the audience is at ease, and in the wings, a poet is clearing his throat, ready to give this era its voice. The gentle melody of the panduri in the courtyard fades, its final notes hanging in the air like dust motes in the afternoon sun. The serene, domestic peace you've been observing begins to acquire a new layer of sound, a low, excited murmur. It's the sound of courtly gossip, but it's different from the malicious whispers that dogged the early years of Tamar's reign. This is a buzz of anticipation, a shared secret that is too good to keep. You follow the sound, drifting through the sun-drenched corridors of the palace. The guards you pass are still at their posts, the bureaucrats are still shuffling through documents, but there's a new energy in their interactions. A shared smile, a knowing glance. Something is afoot. You find yourself drawn towards the royal library, a place that has grown significantly in recent years. It's no longer just a repository for religious texts and historical chronicles. It's a vibrant intellectual hub. Inside, the air smells of old parchment, leather bindings, and the faint, sharp tang of ink. Scholars huddle over manuscripts, their brows furrowed in concentration. Translators work diligently, rendering Greek philosophy and Persian poetry into the elegant, curling script of the Georgian alphabet. The peace dividend of Tamar's reign is being invested right here, in the accumulation and creation of knowledge. It is here that you first hear the name, spoken in a hushed, almost reverent tone, Rustaveli. Shoda Rustaveli. The name passes from one scholar to another. At first, you piece it together from fragments of conversation. Have you heard? The treasurer, Rustaveli, is writing. They say the queen herself commissioned it. An epic, not like the old tales, something new. The man himself is a figure of some mystery. The historical record on Shoda Rustaveli is frustratingly thin, a fact that has made him a legend. What is generally accepted is that he was a nobleman from the Meskheti region and served as the royal treasurer to Queen Tamar. This is a fascinating detail in itself. The man who would become the nation's poet laureate was also its chief financial officer. Imagine the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury secretly penning the next great American novel. It speaks to the caliber of person in Tamar's court, a place where a master of fiscal policy could also be a master of the poetic arts. You catch a glimpse of him across the library. He is not a young, starving artist. He's a man of status and maturity, well-dressed, with the thoughtful, intense face of someone who spends his days in deep concentration. He is speaking with one of the scribes, gesturing at a freshly inked page of parchment. He is not flamboyant or theatrical. He has the quiet, confident air of a master craftsman, someone who understands the weight and value of every single word. The whispers you hear are about the work he is creating. It is an epic poem, they say, but not one that retells the stories of Georgia's past kings or saints. It is a romance, a tale of chivalry, loyalty, and adventure set in faraway, fictional lands. India and Arabia. This is a bold choice. In an era where literature was often a tool of state propaganda or religious instruction, he is writing a story for the sake of the story itself, a celebration of human emotions and ideals. You follow the whispers out of the library and into the more relaxed setting of a royal feast. The room is filled with the same nobles who once vied for military power, now trying to outdo each other with their cultural sophistication. The conversation is peppered with references to Plato and newly translated Persian poems. Being a warrior is still respected, of course, but being a man of culture is the new status symbol. You overhear a small group of courtiers discussing the poem. One, a young woman with a sly smile, claims to have heard a few stanzas recited. "The language," she says, her voice full of wonder, "it's like nothing I've ever heard." He makes the words dance. Another, a gruff old general who looks more comfortable holding a sword than a wine goblet, grunts. "I hear it's about a knight who wears a panther's skin. A strange choice for a hero's armor." This quirky detail, the panther skin, is central to the poem's mystique. It's an exotic, powerful image, suggesting a hero who is both noble and wild, civilized and primal. It captures the imagination of the court. Who is this knight? Why a panther's skin? The questions buzz around the room, building a sense of anticipation. Rustavelli is, in essence, running a brilliant pre-release marketing campaign without even trying. The scarcity of information only makes the desire for the finished product more intense. This raises a question that historians and literary scholars have debated for centuries. To what extent was Tamar personally involved in the creation of this work? The poem's dedication explicitly praises her, hailing her as the inspiration for its ideals. Was this just standard courtly flattery, a poet paying tribute to his patron? Or did she actively commission the work with a specific purpose in mind? Some scholars believe she encouraged Rustavelli to write a poem that would codify the new chivalric values of her court: loyalty, friendship, gender equality, and rational thought, presenting a new national ideal to replace the old warrior ethos. She was, in this view, not just the subject of the poem, but its co-creator, its ideological architect. You see Tamar at the head of the table, listening to the conversations around her. A small, knowing smile plays on her lips. Whether she commissioned the poem or is simply the fortunate recipient of its dedication, she clearly understands its potential. She has built a kingdom of stone and steel, a realm of physical security. But a nation's soul cannot be housed in fortresses. It must live in its stories, its art, its ideas. The whispers continue, weaving a tapestry of rumor and expectation. The poem is becoming a legend before it has even been fully written. It is a reflection of the court itself, sophisticated, confident, and hungry for a story that will define its glorious new era. The quiet hum of safety has given birth to the excited buzz of creation. The stage is perfectly set, the audience is leaning in, and the story of the knight in the strange and wonderful panther skin is about to begin. The buzz of anticipation in the court finally gives way to the story itself. The scene shifts from the public spectacle of the feast to a more intimate and elemental setting. You are seated on a plush carpet near a large, crackling fireplace in one of the palace's private chambers. The chill of the mountain night is held at bay by the thick stone walls and the dancing flames, which cast long, flickering shadows that make the room feel both cozy and vast. The air smells of burning oak, mulled wine, and the sweet perfume of scented candles. Tamar is here, seated in a high-backed chair, her regal posture softened by the warm, dim light. David Soslan is beside her, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword even in relaxation. A select group of courtiers, the inner circle, are gathered around, and in the center of the room, holding a beautifully bound manuscript, is Shota Rustavelli. His voice, when he begins to read, is not loud or overly dramatic. It is calm and clear, letting the power of the words themselves carry the weight of the story. He begins to recite the night in the panther's skin. And as he does, the world outside this warm room seems to fall away. You are drawn into the story, into a world of brave knights, wise kings, and fiercely intelligent princesses. The story follows the adventures of two heroes, of Tandil and Teriel, the titular knight, as they search for a lost love, the Princess Nestenderjan. It's a quest that takes them across exotic landscapes, from Arabia to India, filled with epic battles, cunning deceptions, and profound moments of friendship. As you listen, you realize you are finding yourself, or at least the ideals of your new, peaceful world, reflected in the verses of the poem. The story is a mirror held up to Tamar's court. The heroes are not just mindless brutes. They are thoughtful, emotional men who value friendship and loyalty above all else. Of Tandil's devotion to helping his friend Teriel is the central engine of the plot. This is a profound statement in a world so often dominated by personal ambition and betrayal. Rustaveli is celebrating a brotherhood based on love and mutual respect, a subtle nod to the partnership between Tamar and David Soslin and the loyalty she has cultivated in her court. Then there are the female characters. This is where the poem is truly revolutionary and where you can feel Tamar's influence most strongly. The princesses, Nestenderjan and Tinaten, are not damsels in distress waiting to be rescued. They are the prime movers of the story. Tinaten, an heir to a kingdom, calmly and rationally sends her beloved of Tandil on his quest, not as a test of his love, but as a necessary mission of state and friendship. She is a ruler, a mirror of Tamar herself, who balances love with duty. Nestenderjan, the captive princess, is fierce and defiant, engineering her own escape attempts and never once falling into despair. These are women of agency, intelligence, and immense courage. It's a stunningly progressive portrayal of gender for the 12th century. Rustaveli has created female characters who are the equals of his male heroes in every way, a clear reflection of the reality of a kingdom ruled by a powerful female meep. You settle deeper into the cushions, letting the rhythm of the verses wash over you. Rustaveli's poetry is famously complex and beautiful, written in a specific 16-syllable meter called sherry. It's a form that is both musical and majestic. Even if you don't understand the Georgian words, you can feel the artistry in the cadence of his voice, the rise and fall of the lines. It's like listening to a master musician. This brings you to a fascinating historical fact about the poem: its immediate and lasting impact on Georgian culture. The Knight in the Panther's Skin was not just a courtly entertainment. It became a foundational text, a second Bible for the Georgian people. For centuries, it was a part of a bride's dowry. Couples memorized verses to quote to each other. Its phrases and aphorisms entered the common language, much like Shakespeare's did for English. The ideals it espoused, unwavering loyalty, the equality of men and women, the celebration of romantic love, and the importance of friendship, became the defining characteristics of the Georgian national identity. This single poem, born in the peace of Tamar's reign, did more to shape the soul of the nation than any military victory. As Rustaveli reads on, you notice a lesser-known, quirky detail within the poem's philosophy. It's a work filled with Neoplatonic ideas, concepts of a higher, divine love that are reflected in the earthly love between the characters. But it's also incredibly practical. One of the poem's most famous aphorisms is, "What you give is yours, what you keep is lost." It's a beautiful, concise expression of a philosophy of generosity and action. It argues that true ownership comes from giving something away, be it wealth, help, or love, because that act creates a legacy. What you hoard and hide, however, is ultimately meaningless and lost to time. It's a philosophy that perfectly encapsulates the spirit of Tamar's reign, which was defined by the generous outflow of culture and security. The fire crackles, and the story of the night continues, a tale of sorrow, hope, and unwavering devotion. But historians are still left with a tantalizing question: who was the poem really about? On the surface, it's a fantasy set in foreign lands. But many scholars believe it's a complex allegory for the political situation in Georgia. Is Teriel, the wandering knight in the panther's skin, a representation of the exiled and disgraced Yuri Bogolyubsky, recast as a tragic romantic hero? Is the search for Nestenderjan an allegory for a political alliance Tamar hoped to make? Or, most tantalizingly, is the entire poem a secret love letter from Rustaveli to Tamar herself? The poet's praise for his queen in the prologue is so effusive, so personal, that it has fueled speculation for 800 years. Was the treasurer secretly in love with his monarch, channeling his impossible passion into this epic tale of devotion? We will never know. The flames dip and sway, and Rustaveli's voice falls silent as he finishes a canto. The room is quiet for a moment, the listeners suspended in the world he has created. Tamar looks from the poet to the fire, a thoughtful, unreadable expression on her face. The story has given her court a soul, a mythos. It has taken the piece she fought so hard to create and filled it with a beauty that will far outlast the stone of her fortresses and the gold in her treasury. The last echo of Rustaveli's voice fades, but the feeling of profound, meaningful creation lingers in the air. The fire in the hearth dies down to glowing embers, and the cozy warmth of the private chamber dissolves. You find yourself standing in a different kind of space, one that is cooler, more expansive, and filled with a different set of sensory details. The air smells of wet lime plaster, mineral pigments, and the sharp, clean scent of scaffolding made from freshly cut pine. You are not in a place of finished beauty, but one where beauty is in the messy, vibrant process of being born. You are inside a newly constructed monastery, one of the many that have been founded or expanded during this era of peace and prosperity. It is perched on a cliffside, with arched windows that look out over a stunning green valley. The stone walls are bare, a blank canvas of pale, damp plaster. Light streams in, illuminating the scaffolding that lines the interior of the church, creating a complex web of wood and rope. On these platforms, artists are at work. You stand on the cool stone floor, looking up. Above you, a painter lies on his back on a wooden plank, his arm outstretched, dabbing at the curved ceiling with a fine brush. He is working on a depiction of Christ Pantocrator, the ruler of the universe, surrounded by a host of angels. The artist is a master, his movements economical and precise. He doesn't have the luxury of time. Fresco painting, or a fresco, is a demanding technique. The artist must apply the pigment to the plaster while it is still wet, so the color chemically bonds with the wall itself as it dries. It's a race against time, requiring immense skill, confidence, and a steady hand. One mistake and a whole section of plaster must be chipped away and redone. You let your gaze drift from the ceiling to the walls. Different artists are working on different scenes, bringing the stories of the Bible and the lives of the Georgian saints to life. The church is a hive of quiet, focused activity. You hear the soft scratch of brushes, the clink of ceramic pots filled with water, and the low murmur of conversation as a master painter instructs his apprentice on how to mix a specific shade of blue. The colors are brilliant, almost shockingly so. There is a deep, rich lapis lazuli blue made from ground gemstones imported from Afghanistan. There is a vibrant vermilion red and an earthy yellow ochre dug from the Georgian soil. And everywhere, there is gold leaf, painstakingly applied to halos and the robes of holy figures, catching the light and making the walls shimmer with a divine glow. These paintings are not just decoration, they are a form of visual theology, a way of telling the stories of the faith to a populace that was largely illiterate. The walls are beginning to speak, telling tales of sacrifice, redemption, and divine glory. This flourishing of monumental church painting is a well-documented historical fact of Tamar's reign. Monasteries like Betania, Kinsvizi, and the cave city of Vardzia itself were adorned with these magnificent frescoes, creating a distinct Georgian style of religious art known for its emotional expressiveness and regal figures. You walk closer to one of the walls, where an artist is working on a donor portrait. This is a common feature in Georgian churches, a fresco depicting the royal patrons who funded the construction. And here, you see a familiar face taking shape on the wet plaster. It is Queen Tamar. The artist is capturing her image, not as a remote, divine figure, but as a real person. He carefully paints her distinctive headdress, the rich embroidery of her robes, and the cross she holds in her hand. Beside her, he is painting her son and heir, the young George IV. It's a powerful statement, a way of placing the royal family directly into the sacred narrative, connecting their earthly rule with divine authority. And this is where you notice a lesser-known, quirky detail about these royal portraits. In many of the frescoes from her era, Tamar is depicted holding a model of the very church you are standing in. It's a lovely, symbolic gesture, showing her as the creator and protector of this sacred space. But it's also a bit of a meta-joke, an artist painting a picture of his patron holding a tiny version of the building he is currently painting in. It's a charming, slightly surreal touch that humanizes these grand, formal portraits. As you watch the artist's work, you contemplate the origins of their style. Georgian art didn't develop in a vacuum. It was a unique synthesis of influences. You can see the formal, hierarchical compositions of Byzantine art, which was the dominant style of the Orthodox Christian world. But you also see other, more local flavors. There's a certain dynamism and a warmth in the figures that feels distinctly Georgian. And, in the intricate patterns on the robes and the decorative borders, you can see the influence of Persian art, a testament to Georgia's position as a crossroads of cultures. It's a visual representation of the kingdom itself, Christian and European in its faith, but Caucasus bred in its spirit, with a dash of Eastern spice. But this raises a question that art historians still debate. Who are these artists? Were they local Georgian masters, trained in native workshops and monasteries? Or were they itinerant masters from Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, hired to bring their prestigious skills to the booming Georgian court? The truth is likely a combination of both. Some frescoes show the clear hand of a Constantinopolitan master, while others have a more rustic, uniquely Georgian feel. It's probable that foreign masters came and worked alongside local artists, creating a dynamic environment of exchange and learning, leading to the birth of a hybrid style that was uniquely Georgian. You look up at the half-finished face of Christ on the ceiling. His eyes, once they are painted, will gaze down on centuries of worshippers. The artists working here are creating something enduring, something that will outlive them, their patrons, and the peace of this golden age. They are embedding the stories and faces of their time directly into the stone of the kingdom. The poet gave the era its soul, but these painters are giving it a face, ensuring that the image of Queen Tamar and her prosperous kingdom will not be forgotten. The walls are not just speaking, they are learning to sing a silent, colorful, and eternal song. The scent of wet plaster and pine scaffolding begins to fade, replaced by a completely different set of aromas. You smell the sharp, metallic tang of hot metal, the acrid bite of flux, and the faint, sweet smell of beeswax used for polishing. The cool, echoing silence of the monastery gives way to a chorus of small, precise sounds, the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of a tiny hammer, the soft hiss of a goldsmith's torch, and the gentle scratch of a burnishing tool against silver. You have moved from the grand, sacred space of the church to the cramped, focused intimacy of a workshop. You are in the goldsmith's quarter in the bustling capital city of Tbilisi. The room is small, cluttered, and bathed in the warm, intense glow of several oil lamps, their light augmented by a large, convex lens of water that a master craftsman is using to magnify his work. Dust motes, tiny flecks of gold and silver among them, dance in the shafts of light. It's a space of intense concentration, a secular monastery where precious metals are worshipped with a craftsman's devotion. You watch a master goldsmith at his bench. He is an older man, his face a roadmap of fine lines, his eyes magnified by a jeweler's loupe. He is working on a chalice, a sacred vessel destined for the altar of a new church. He isn't forging it with heavy blows, but shaping it with a delicate and patient skill. The technique he is using is called repoussé, where he works from the back of the metal sheet, hammering it out to create a raised design on the front. It's a slow, painstaking process that requires a deep understanding of how the metal moves and yields. All around the small workshop, other artisans are engaged in different stages of their craft. A young apprentice is carefully coiling fine gold wire to be used in filigree work. Another is setting tiny, polished gemstones into the cover of a gospel book. On a nearby table, finished pieces are laid out on a dark velvet cloth, waiting for inspection or delivery. You see ornate crosses, heavy pectoral icons meant to be worn by bishops, and intricate belt buckles for noblemen. Each piece is a miniature masterpiece of skill and devotion. The flourishing of high-quality metalwork is a well-established historical fact of Tamar's Georgia. The kingdom's wealth, secured by trade and tribute, allowed the court and the church to commission these incredibly expensive objects. Gold and silver were not just signs of wealth, they were considered a fitting tribute to God and a reflection of the kingdom's own divine favor. Great works of art, like the famous Kukuli triptych, an icon adorned with over 100 pieces of enamel and countless gems, were created and embellished during this period. It was an art form that combined immense material wealth with profound spiritual and artistic expression. You lean closer to observe the master craftsman's work on the chalice. He is finishing a scene depicting the Last Supper. The tiny figures of Christ and his apostles are rendered with astonishing detail and emotional depth, each one no bigger than your thumbnail. And this is where you notice a lesser-known and particularly Georgian characteristic of this work, the use of cloisonné enamel. This is an incredibly difficult technique where small compartments, or cloisons, are created on the metal surface using thin strips of gold wire. These compartments are then filled with colored glass paste and fired in a kiln, creating a smooth, vibrant, jewel-like image. Georgian artisans were masters of this technique, developing their own unique style characterized by translucent colors and expressive figures. The finished product looks less like metalwork and more like a painting made of glass and gold. The glow from the furnace in the corner of the room casts a warm, almost magical light on the scene. It's a far cry from the grand, public art of the frescoes. This is a private, personal art form. A fresco is seen by a whole congregation, but a piece like this, a chalice, an icon, a piece of jewelry, is meant to be held, to be examined up close. It's an intimate connection between the owner, the creator, and the divine. You can almost feel the craftsman's own piety being hammered into the gold, his breath held steady as he sets a tiny ruby into place. This intense focus on small, precious objects raises an interesting question for historians and art critics. In an age of monumental building and epic poetry, why was there such a profound investment in these miniature, portable treasures? Some argue it's a reflection of Georgia's precarious history. In a land so often subject to invasion, portable wealth was practical. A fresco can't be saved from a conquering army, but a golden triptych can be hidden in a mountain cave and preserved for future generations. These small, precious objects were not just art, they were a kind of cultural seed bank, a concentrated repository of the kingdom's wealth, faith, and artistic skill that could endure through times of trouble. You watch as the master craftsman sets down his hammer and picks up a polishing cloth. He gently buffs the surface of the finished chalice, and the gold gleams in the lamplight, seeming to radiate a warmth of its own. He holds it up, turning it slowly, his critical eye searching for any imperfection. He is not just a smith, he is an artist, a creator of sacred beauty. He's part of a vital, thriving industry of artisans whose collective skill is adding to the luster of the Golden Age. While the poet gives the kingdom its voice and the painter gives it a face, the goldsmith gives it a warm, enduring glow, crafting the very objects that will become the treasured symbols of this remarkable era, tangible links to a time of faith, prosperity, and unparalleled artistry. You step out of the warm, concentrated glow of the goldsmith's shop, and the sensory world expands dramatically. The small, precise sounds of the workshop are swallowed up by the rich, chaotic symphony of a thriving medieval city. You are standing on a bustling street in Tbilisi, the capital of Tamar's kingdom, and you're about to spend a day just walking, listening, and breathing it all in. The first thing that hits you is the sheer energy of the place. The streets are narrow and winding, paved with uneven cobblestones, and they are teeming with life. People of every description throng the roadways, nobles on horseback, their harnesses jingling, merchants shouting to be heard over the din, priests in dark robes moving with serene purpose through the chaos, and farmers guiding donkeys laden with produce from the countryside. It's a river of humanity, and you let yourself be carried along by its current. The architecture is a beautiful, jumbled mix of styles. You see classic Georgian houses with intricately carved wooden balconies overhanging the street, their designs so delicate they look like lace. These stand shoulder to shoulder with stone buildings that have the pointed arches and decorative tile work of Persian design. Domes of churches, with their distinctive conical roofs, punctuate the skyline alongside the slender minarets of mosques. This architectural fusion is a clear sign of a well-established historical fact. Tbilisi under Tamar was a cosmopolitan and remarkably tolerant metropolis. It was a major hub on the Silk Road, a place where Christians, Muslims, and Jews lived and traded together in relative harmony. The city was a melting pot, and its very layout told a story of cultural coexistence. You turn a corner and find yourself in the market district. The air here is thick with 1,000 competing smells. You can pick out the sharp, spicy scent of a vendor selling heaps of colorful spices from the east, saffron, cardamom, and cloves. A few steps further, and that smell is overtaken by the rich, savory aroma of roasting meat from a street-side kebab stand. Then comes the sweet, intoxicating scent of a bakery, where a man is pulling huge, round loaves of shoda's puri bread from a deep, cylindrical clay oven called a tone. He slaps the dough onto the hot interior wall, and it bakes in minutes, emerging puffy, golden, and irresistible. The smell is so good it feels like a physical presence. You continue your walk, absorbing the sounds. You hear the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer from a nearby alley. You hear the melodic calls of vendors advertising their wares, juicy peaches, wheels of sharp Gouda cheese, and glistening strings of church keela, the candy made from grape must and walnuts that looks like lumpy, colorful candles. You hear conversations in a dozen different languages, Georgian, of course, but also Armenian, Persian, Arabic, and the dialects of the mountain tribes. It's the soundtrack of a city that is confident, prosperous, and open to the world. As you wander, you notice a lesser-known but vital feature of the city, its public baths. You pass the entrance to one of the Abano-Tabani district's bathhouses, marked by its low, brick dome. A cloud of sulfur-scented steam billows out as someone exits. These natural hot sulfur springs were the heart of Tbilisi's social life. They weren't just for getting clean, they were places for business deals, political gossip, and socializing. It was the 12th century equivalent of a spa, a coffee shop, and a boardroom all rolled into one. For a city to have such a sophisticated and popular public utility speaks volumes about its wealth and civic organization. The sun climbs higher in the sky, and the heat of midday settles on the city. You seek shade in a quiet courtyard, where a fountain splashes peacefully. It's attached to a caravanserai, a large and built to accommodate the merchants and travelers passing through. Here, you see a Persian silk merchant haggling good-naturedly with a Georgian wine trader, communicating through a mixture of broken phrases and expressive hand gestures. They seal their deal not with a handshake, but by sharing a cup of wine, a testament to the trust that underpins the city's commerce. This scene of peaceful, multicultural commerce leads to an open question that economic historians of the period still explore. What was the exact nature of Tamar's economic policy, beyond her tax reforms? How did her government so successfully foster this level of trade? Did she establish specific trade treaties with neighboring states? Did she create a standardized system of weights and measures to ensure fair trade? Or was her greatest contribution simply the establishment of security, the Tamar's peace, which created a stable environment where commerce could naturally flourish without much direct intervention? The chronicles tend to focus on military victories and religious piety, leaving the nitty-gritty of economic policy frustratingly obscure. But standing in this courtyard, watching this casual but vital exchange, you can see that whatever the methods, the results were spectacularly successful. As evening approaches, the harsh light softens, and the city takes on a golden glow. The pace slows. Families gather on their balconies to escape the heat of their homes. The sounds of music begin to drift from windows, the plaintive notes of a flute, the strumming of a panduri. The smells of evening meals being cooked fill the air. The chaos of the day has mellowed into a comfortable, domestic hum. Your slow walk through Tbilisi has shown you the foundation upon which the Golden Age was built. It wasn't just a matter of royal patronage. The poetry, the art, the metalwork, it all grew out of the fertile soil of this prosperous, dynamic, and surprisingly diverse society. The Golden Age was not just happening in the palace or the monastery. It was happening right here, in the lively, fragrant, and noisy streets of this remarkable city. The warm, golden light of the Tbilisi evening dissolves, and you feel a cool, salty breeze on your face. The sounds of the city are replaced by the rhythmic shush of waves on a shoreline and the cry of gulls overhead. You are no longer in the heart of Georgia, but on its periphery, looking out over the vast, dark expanse of the Black Sea. The sun is setting, painting the water in strokes of orange and purple. You are standing on the battlements of a newly fortified city. Below you are the bustling docks of a busy port. This is Trebizond, a city with a long and storied history, once a part of the Byzantine Empire. But now, it is something new, the capital of the nascent empire of Trebizond, a friendly state that owes its very existence to the shrewd political maneuvering of Queen Tamar. Your gaze follows a ship as it skillfully navigates its way into the harbor, its sails full. It's a Georgian merchant vessel, laden with wine, honey, and metalwork, ready to be traded for the goods of the wider Byzantine and Mediterranean world. The establishment of this friendly coastal empire was not an act of direct conquest, but a masterful piece of geopolitical strategy, a widely acknowledged historical fact of Tamar's foreign policy. The story begins a few years earlier, in 1204. You are whisked back in time for a moment, to witness the event that made this all possible. You see the great city of Constantinople, the magnificent capital of the Byzantine Empire, being sacked and burned. But the invaders are not a foreign horde from the east. They are the soldiers of the Fourth Crusade, fellow Christians who, through a complex and cynical series of political and economic maneuvers, turned on the very empire they were supposed to be helping. The Byzantine world is thrown into chaos. Its central authority has crumbled, and the empire has fractured into several smaller successor states, each vying for legitimacy. It is in this moment of chaos that Tamar sees an opportunity. She has relatives, two young princes of the Byzantine Komnenos dynasty named Alexios and David. Their father had been killed, and they had been raised for a time as exiles in the Georgian court under Tamar's protection. They are, in a sense, her protégés. With the Byzantine Empire in disarray, Tamar provides her young relatives with an army and financial backing. She helps them seize the city of Trebizond and the surrounding coastal region along the Black Sea. You are back on the battlements, watching the results of this decision. The new empire of Trebizond acts as a perfect buffer state. It secures Georgia's southwestern flank, protecting it from the turbulent politics of the post-1204 Byzantine world. More importantly, it gives landlocked Georgia direct, secure access to the sea. This new port provides an invaluable outlet for Georgian trade, connecting its merchants to the lucrative trade routes of the Black Sea and beyond. It's a brilliant move, expanding Georgia's sphere of influence without overextending its military. It's like a savvy helping a talented former employee set up a new company that becomes a key supplier and strategic partner. As you look around the city of Trebizond, you see Tamar's influence everywhere. You see Georgian-style architectural elements in the new churches being built. You hear the Georgian language spoken by the soldiers who form the core of the new state's army. This leads you to a lesser-known detail about this relationship: the ongoing cultural and familial ties. This wasn't a one-time intervention. The two states remained closely linked for generations. The rulers of Trebizond often took Georgian spouses, reinforcing the alliance with blood ties. The art and culture of Trebizond became a fascinating hybrid of its Greek-Byzantine roots and strong Georgian influences, a small reflection of Tamar's golden age mirrored on the coast. You see the young Emperor Alexios I of Trebizond walking along the ramparts with his advisors. He still looks to Georgia and to Tamar as his protector and role model. His fledgling empire is a testament to her far-reaching power, a power that is not just military, but diplomatic and dynastic. She has become a kingmaker, shaping the political landscape far beyond her own borders. This act of political creation, however, raises a complex question that historians of the region still debate. What was Tamar's ultimate goal in creating the Empire of Trebizond? Was it purely a defensive and economic move, a pragmatic decision to secure her borders and trade routes in a newly dangerous world? Or was it something more ambitious? Some historians have suggested that Tamar harbored a grander vision: a pan-Caucasian empire, a unified Christian bloc led by Georgia that could dominate the region and act as a major power broker between Europe and Asia. In this view, Trebizond was not just a buffer state, but the first piece in a much larger puzzle, a first step towards projecting Georgian power onto the world stage. The chronicles refer to Tamar with titles like Champion of the Messiah and Extender of her Kingdom to the Sea. These titles suggest an expansive, almost imperial ambition. Perhaps she saw herself not just as the Queen of Georgia, but as the protector of all Orthodox Christians in the region, stepping into the power vacuum left by the weakened Byzantine Empire. We can't know the full extent of her ambitions, but standing here, feeling the sea breeze and watching the Georgian flags on the merchant ships, you can feel the sheer scale of her influence. A messenger arrives on a lathered horse, carrying a dispatch for the young Emperor Alexios. It is from the Georgian court, from Tamar. As he reads it, you see the respect and deference on his face. The message might contain advice, a promise of aid, or a subtle directive. Whatever it is clear where the real power in this relationship lies. Tamar's reign has reached its zenith. Her kingdom is secure at home, prosperous, and bursting with cultural energy. And now, its influence radiates outwards, shaping the destiny of neighboring states. She has not only created a golden age within Georgia, but has also begun to export its light, establishing a legacy that is etched not just in the mountains of the Caucasus, but along the shores of the Black Sea. The queen of a landlocked kingdom now has her own port, her own window to the wider world, a testament to her vision as a stateswoman of the highest order. The vast, open vista of the Black Sea horizon begins to draw inward. The salty air and the cries of the gulls dissolve, and you find yourself once again in the heartland of Georgia, but this time, you are not in the palace or a monastery. You are in a small, humble village nestled in a mountain valley. The sun is warm, the air smells of hay and wood smoke, and the only sounds are the bleating of sheep on a nearby hill and the laughter of children playing in a dusty lane. This is the Georgia of the common person, far from the high politics of the court and the grand artistic commissions. And it is here, among the ordinary people, that you can begin to understand the other half of Tamar's legacy, not the one of frescoes and poems, but the one of legend. You are here to explore the woman behind the title, to try and separate the myth from the monarch. You sit in the shade of a large walnut tree, watching the life of the village unfold. An old woman sits on her porch, spinning wool. A farmer sharpens his scythe, his movements slow and practiced. It is a scene of deep, abiding peace, the Tamar's peace you've felt before, but experienced at its most fundamental level. For these people, the Golden Age isn't about epic poetry. It's about being able to raise your children and tend your fields without the constant fear of invasion or ruinous taxes. You listen to the stories they tell. They don't speak of Tamar's geopolitical strategies or her patronage of Neoplatonic poetry. They speak of her as if she were a local saint, a figure of almost supernatural justice and piety. You hear a story from an old man about how the queen, disguised as a commoner, once traveled through his grandfather's village. She saw a corrupt local official demanding an unjust tax from a poor widow. Tamar, the story goes, revealed herself, dismissed the official on the spot, and paid the widow's tax for a year from her own purse. Is the story true? Almost certainly not in its literal details. But that doesn't matter. This is a historical fact of a different kind, the creation of a powerful folk narrative. Legends like this were widespread during and after her reign, forming a crucial part of her public image. They portrayed her as a monarch who was not remote and inaccessible, but one who was intimately concerned with the welfare of her humblest subjects. She was seen as a protector of the poor and a scourge of the corrupt. These stories were the most effective form of political propaganda, building a bond of fierce loyalty between the monarch and her people that went deeper than any law or decree. You hear another story, this one from a woman weaving a colorful rug. She tells a tale about how the queen prayed for 3 days and 3 nights without food or water to ensure victory for her army in a crucial battle. The story ends with an angel appearing to her in a dream, promising that God had heard her prayers and would grant her soldiers strength. This legend highlights the other key pillar of her mythos, her profound piety. In the popular imagination, she was not just a clever ruler, she was a holy woman whose righteousness gave Georgia a direct line to God. Her military victories were not just the result of good generalship, they were miracles, rewards for her faith. This is where you encounter a curious, lesser-known detail that blurs the line between her official and legendary status. Tamar was, in fact, officially canonized as a saint by the Georgian Orthodox Church. Her feast day is still celebrated today. Her official title in the church is Holy Righteous King Tamar. Notice again the use of king. Even in sainthood, Her unique status as a female sovereign is preserved. This formal sanctification cemented the folk legends into official doctrine, transforming her from a historical figure into a sacred one. She is the only secular ruler of the Golden Age to be so honored, a testament to the enduring power of her myth. But as you sit under this tree, listening to these tales of a perfect, saintly ruler, you are also forced to contemplate the woman behind the icon. Who was Tamar really? This is the great open question that historians grapple with. Was she the gentle, merciful, and deeply pious woman of the legends? Or was she a pragmatic and sometimes ruthless political operator who understood the power of a good public image and cultivated these stories for her own ends? The truth, as always, is likely a complex mixture of both. To survive and thrive as she did, she must have been tough, shrewd, and capable of making difficult, even brutal decisions. You think back to the civil war against her first husband. She crushed that rebellion decisively. She presided over a vast military apparatus that was not always engaged in purely defensive wars. Her reign saw the expansion of Georgian territory and the subjugation of neighboring peoples. This was not the work of a soft or indecisive ruler. And yet, the evidence for her genuine piety and her commitment to justice is also compelling. Her tax reforms were real. Her clemency towards her enemies, like exiling Uri twice instead of executing him, was unusual for the era. The cultural flourishing she presided over was not the work of a cynical tyrant, but of someone who genuinely valued art, knowledge, and faith. Perhaps the best way to understand her is to see that the two sides were not contradictory. She may have been a genuinely devout and just person whose personal values happened to be brilliant politics. In 12th century Georgia, a kingdom surrounded by hostile powers and defined by its fierce Christian faith, a ruler who was seen as holy and just was also seen as strong and legitimate. Her piety was not a distraction from her power, it was the very source of it. The sun begins to dip behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the valley. The children are called inside. The farmer shoulders his scythe and heads home. The simple, peaceful life of the village goes on, protected by the power and the myth of a queen they would never meet, but whose presence they felt every day. You realize that separating the myth from the monarch is ultimately impossible, because the myth itself became a part of her monarchy, a tool she used to build the loyalty and stability that made the entire Golden Age possible. Her greatest creation wasn't a poem or a church, it was her own legend. The warm, legendary glow of the village at dusk begins to cool and fade. The air grows heavier, more solemn. The sounds of pastoral life are replaced by a profound and anticipatory quiet that seems to hang over the entire kingdom. The Golden Age, which felt so vibrant and eternal, now feels fragile, tinged with the melancholy of an approaching end. Time has passed. The years of Tamar's long and glorious reign are drawing to a close. You find yourself standing on a windswept promontory overlooking a vast, rugged landscape of forested mountains and deep river gorges. The sky is overcast, and a chill wind rustles the leaves of the trees. It feels like the whole of Georgia is holding its breath. The queen is ill. The vibrant, indomitable ruler who defined her era is succumbing to a grievous malady, as the chroniclers vaguely put it. After a long and triumphant reign of nearly 3 decades, the central pillar of the kingdom is beginning to crumble. The mood of the nation is one of deep, anxious sorrow. You can feel it in the hushed conversations of the couriers who ride past you on the road below, their faces grim. You can sense it in the monasteries, where the monks have begun perpetual prayers for her recovery. The people of Georgia are not just losing a monarch, they are losing their protector, their saint, the living symbol of their nation's strength and pride. You are drawn to a scene inside a royal castle, not the grand palace in Tbilisi, but a more remote fortress where Tamar has been taken, perhaps in the hope that the clean mountain air might revive her. The room is quiet and dim, the rich tapestries seeming to absorb the sound. Tamar lies in her bed, weakened but still lucid. Her children, George and Rizudin, now young adults, are at her side. Her husband and partner, David Soslin, has already passed away, and you can see the toll of that loss and her long years of rule etched upon her face. She has gathered her most loyal nobles and advisors for a final address. Her voice is weak, a mere shadow of the commanding tone that once silenced rebellious lords, but her words are clear and full of authority. This moment is a historical fact, recorded by her chroniclers. She confirms her son, George, as her successor. She gives him her final counsel, urging him to care for the poor, uphold justice, and defend the church. It is her last official act, a final, steadying hand on the rudder of the state, ensuring a smooth transition of power. She is a queen to the very end, her sense of duty unwavering even in the face of death. After she dismisses the court, you remain for a moment, a silent observer in the quiet room. Her children stay with her. You see the deep grief in their eyes, the fear of a future without her. George, who will become George IV, is known to history as Lasha, meaning the enlightened. He has been raised in the full sunlight of the Golden Age, a poet and a warrior in his own right. He seems confident, but how can anyone truly be prepared to fill such a legendary role? The weight of the crown is about to pass to a new generation. And it is here, in the final days of her life, that the Queen sets in motion one last, enduring mystery. She gives instructions for her burial, and this is where the story enters the realm of legend and intense historical debate. She knows that the graves of great rulers are often targets for desecration by invading armies. The memory of the Crusader sack of Constantinople, where the tombs of Byzantine emperors were looted, is still fresh. She is determined that her final resting place will remain undisturbed, forever secret and safe. The lesser-known detail, or rather, the collection of conflicting legends, concerns the bizarre and elaborate measures taken to ensure this secrecy. One story claims that after her death, her coffin was carried out of the castle, but then several, perhaps 7 or even 9, empty coffins were also dispatched in different directions. Funeral processions headed out across the kingdom, each one appearing to carry the Queen's body to a different location, deliberately creating a web of confusion and false trails. It's a plot worthy of a spy thriller, a final act of royal misdirection. Her body was taken to the old capital, Mskita, for a state funeral at the Svetitskuveli Cathedral, where she was crowned. But this, the story goes, was just for show. After the public ceremonies were over, her body was secretly moved to its true, final resting place. And nobody knows where that is. This is the great, unsolved mystery of Tamar's life, the location of her grave. Historians and archaeologists have been searching for it for centuries, and the debate is passionate and ongoing. Where is she buried? One theory holds that she is in a secret, sealed-off chamber in the Gelati Monastery, the traditional burial place of Georgian kings. Another popular theory is that she lies in a hidden niche within the cave city of Vardzia, the mountain fortress she so loved. Some have even suggested she was buried in the Holy Land, near Jerusalem, a final act of piety. Treasure hunters and archaeologists have explored, scanned, and excavated countless sites, but her tomb has never been found. She succeeded completely. Her final secret was perfectly kept. You watch as the symbolic, empty coffins are prepared. It's a strange, melancholy scene. The queen who lived her life so publicly, whose image was painted on church walls and praised in epic poems, has chosen to retreat into ultimate privacy in death. She is withdrawing from the world, leaving behind her legacy, her children, and this one last, tantalizing puzzle. The sky outside the castle window darkens further, A cold rain begins to fall, washing the dust from the mountain leaves. It feels as if the land itself is weeping. The light of the Golden Age is flickering, about to be extinguished. The woman who was its sun is setting, and the kingdom she built must now learn to navigate by the light of the stars she left behind. The memory of her strength, the beauty of her art, and the enduring mystery of her final, quiet secret. The rain falling on the remote castle begins to soften, turning from a mournful downpour into a gentle, cleansing mist. The solemn, heavy air of the death chamber lightens, and your perspective begins to pull back, lifting away from that single, poignant moment. You rise higher and higher, not just in space, but in time. You are floating gently away from the 12th century, watching as the years and decades begin to flow like a river below you. From this gentle distance, you can look back on the era you have just visited, seeing it not as a series of present moments, but as a complete, shining chapter in the long, often tragic, story of Georgia. You see Tamar's life and reign laid out like a tapestry, the threads of her challenges, her triumphs, her art, and her faith all woven together into a single, cohesive image. The Golden Age now has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and from this vantage point, you can finally appreciate the full scope of her legacy. The first thing you notice is how brightly that era shines in contrast to what came after. The peace Tamar worked so hard to build did not last forever. A few short years after her death, a new, terrifying threat appeared on the horizon. First came the Khwarezmians, a destructive force from the east. And then an even greater storm, the Mongols. You see them from your distant perch, a relentless tide sweeping over the region, their arrival marking the abrupt and brutal end of Georgia's Golden Age. You see Tamar's son, George IV Lasha, the enlightened prince raised on poetry and victory, trying desperately to hold the kingdom together against this onslaught. But the world had changed. The old rules of chivalry and regional power politics were no match for the Mongol horde. You see the beautiful cities you walked through, like Tbilisi, being sacked and burned. You see the monasteries and churches, their new frescoes barely dry, being looted. It is a heartbreaking sight, a reminder of how fragile even the most prosperous and confident civilizations can be. But then you notice something remarkable. The kingdom is broken, but its spirit is not. And the source of that resilience is the very legacy Tamar left behind. This is the ultimate historical fact of her reign. The cultural confidence she built became the nation's armor during the dark centuries that followed. When their political independence was lost, the Georgian people held onto their identity through their language, their unique alphabet, their faith, and, above all, their stories. You see a family, generations later, huddled in a mountain village, hiding from a Mongol patrol. And in the dim light of their cottage, a grandfather is reciting verses from the Knight in the Panther's Skin to his grandchildren. He is teaching them not just a poem, but a code of conduct, about loyalty, friendship, and courage in the face of despair. Rustaveli's poem, the product of Tamar's peaceful court, has become a tool of cultural survival. What was once a celebration of a golden age has become a promise that such an age could one day return. You also see a priest in a remote monastery that escaped the worst of the destruction, carefully hiding the precious golden chalices and enamel icons you saw being made. He wraps them in cloth and secrets them away in a hidden crypt, preserving the tangible proof of the kingdom's former glory. These objects became relics, not just of saints, but of a lost era of greatness, a standard against which future generations would measure themselves. This leads to a final, lesser-known detail about her legacy, the Tamar revival periods in Georgian history. Throughout the centuries, whenever Georgia experienced a resurgence of national pride or a period of relative independence, its rulers and artists would consciously look back to Tamar's reign as their inspiration. Kings would style themselves as a new Tamar, and artists would emulate the style of the 12th century frescoes. Her era became a semi-mythical benchmark for greatness, a source of inspiration to draw on during times of struggle and a model to follow in times of renewal. Her golden age wasn't just a historical period, it became a central part of the national psyche. And so, you are left with one final, overarching question that encapsulates her entire story. Was the Golden Age the creation of one remarkable individual? Or was Tamar herself simply the fortunate beneficiary of a unique confluence of historical circumstances? Was she the architect of the era, or was she just the perfect person in the perfect place at the perfect time? Looking back from this great height, it seems impossible to separate the two. The conditions were right. The Seljuk Empire to the south was weakening, the Byzantine Empire to the west was in chaos, and Georgia was primed for a moment of ascendancy. But it required a leader of extraordinary skill, intelligence, and fortitude to seize that moment. Another ruler might have squandered the opportunity, been consumed by internal strife, or overreached militarily. Tamar navigated the treacherous waters of her time with a near-perfect blend of strength, diplomacy, and vision. She was both the product of her time and its principal author. You look back one last time, to the dawn of her reign. You see the young woman in the cave city of Vardzia, her face illuminated by a single candle, learning the hard lessons of power from her father. And you see her at the end, a sainted legend, her body hidden away in a secret tomb, her legacy etched forever against the dawn of a new, more dangerous age. The light she created was so bright that it left a permanent impression on the soul of her nation, an afterimage of glory that would never truly fade, providing comfort and inspiration through all the long, dark nights to come. The quiet mist of the past begins to dissolve, and the gentle, distant view of history softens into a warm and comforting darkness. The journey is over. The story is told. All that remains now is the deep, restorative quiet of the present moment. Let the echoes of the story fade, leaving behind only a sense of peace and a feeling of gentle release. Feel the gentle weight of your body, the steady, easy rhythm of your own breathing. Each breath in is calm and effortless. Each breath out is a soft letting go, releasing the last remnants of the day, releasing the narrative, releasing all effort. There is nothing left for you to do, nothing to figure out, nowhere else to be. You are here in this quiet space and you are safe. Imagine the soft, glowing embers of the fireplace in that palace chamber, warm and orange and slowly pulsing with a gentle light. With every soft pulse of light, feel a wave of relaxation spread through you, from the tips of your toes to the top of your head. A soft, warm wave easing any tension, soothing any lingering thoughts. Your body feels heavy and comfortable, sinking softly into the surface beneath you. The stories of queens and kingdoms, of poetry and stone, can rest now. They are tucked away and your mind can be still. Let the darkness behind your eyes be a soft, velvet curtain, a peaceful and empty space. If any thoughts drift by, just let them go, like little clouds passing across a vast, quiet night sky. Your only task now is to breathe, to rest, and to slide gently into a deep and peaceful sleep. Sweet dreams.